So, how do the playoffs work in ESPN Fantasy? First of all, we're going to be looking at how it is determined who makes the playoffs. Secondly, we're looking at how the actual playoffs themselves work. So without further ado, let's hop straight into it. So, how is it determined who makes the playoffs? All right, so today we're going to be looking at a default ESPN settings league. So in a 10-man league, which what most of you guys are going to be playing in, the top 4 teams will make the playoffs. So how's it determined which 4 teams make the playoffs? Well, the 4 teams with the best record will automatically get into the playoffs. If there is a tie, let's say for example the 4th and the 5th best team had the same record, it will go to the tiebreaker. Now that will also vary by league. You can check that right here. If you go to the info button and you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll be able to see right here in the playoff settings what your league's tiebreaker is. In a default ESPN settings, assuming your commissioner has not changed any of the settings, the tiebreaker should be PF. So what is PF? PF stands for points for. If you go back to the main page right here and you scroll to the right, you're gonna be able to see that PF is points for how many points have been scored on the season. In this setting, whoever has scored the most points on the season, regardless of who they played, will get that last playoff spot. Now, how my league is set up is in a H2H format or a head-to-head, which means whichever team, when they played in the regular season, won against the other team will get that playoff spot. Say, for example, I played against a team in the regular season and I beat them, I will get to go to the playoffs. Now, what if, for example, you play that team twice in the season, you guys traded? So I won one game, they won one game. What would happen in that situation? In that situation, it will go to the second tiebreaker, which in ESPN is the PF or points for. So if you are in a H2H league, you guys both traded, the tiebreaker for that will be who scored the more points on the overall season. Now, if you have 2 conferences, how is it determined who makes the playoffs? For example, in my league, I've actually expanded to a 14-man league. 8 teams make the playoffs, and there are 2 conferences. So there's 6 teams in the AFC, 6 teams in the NFC. How is it determined who makes the playoffs? In this situation, the top 2 teams in each division will get the number 1 and the number 2 seed, and then after that, the next 6 best teams will make the playoffs, regardless of division. So it's not going to be 4 teams from the AFC, 4 teams from the NFC make the playoffs necessarily. It will be the top team in the NFC, the top team from the AFC, and then the best 6 remaining teams. So that is how the playoffs is determined in ESPN Fantasy. If you guys have more questions on that, let me know in the comment section below. Love to hear what you guys have to say about that. So moving on, how do the actual playoffs work in ESPN Fantasy? In a default 10-man league, as I said before, the last 4 weeks of the season, weeks 15 through 18, are going to be reserved for the playoffs. During the final 4 weeks of the season, each matchup will take up 2 weeks. So for example, you'll play one opponent twice, and your combined score from both weeks will determine who wins. So week 15 and 16, you will play against one team, and then if you win the total of that week, you'll go to the championship, and then week 17 and 18 will determine the championship in a default ESPN Fantasy League. Now, as I said before, my league is an 8-man league, and we set it up a little bit differently. In my league, we don't like to play week 18 because a lot of the NFL teams are benching players. Some of the starters are getting saved for the playoffs. So our championship actually happens in week 17. Instead, in my league, we do a 1-week playoff versus 2. So for example, in week 15, you'll play against one team, 16 another team, and then week 17 will be the championship, instead of each round of the playoffs taking 2 weeks. And yeah, again, if you're wondering how your league is set up or your commissioners, I made it clear, you can always go down to right here in the info, scroll to the bottom, and you'll be able to see all these settings right here. That pretty much sums up how ESPN's Fantasy Playoffs works. If you guys have any questions that I did not cover, be sure to let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.